can refer back to this. So you're saying, so you have no automotive experience with this?
I
No.
have no automotive experience, period.
Yes.
Okay.
Me too.
Um, so when you open the when you open go in the system in the morning, you'll have the um, you can just log in your username and password. You can just click on that field, and that will have that. This will bring you into the Bay-masteR program. Um, these will sort kind of your tickets. Estimates would be what ticket status. Um, you're waiting for approval. Approved would be tickets you've marked approved, waiting to be worked on, and finished would be they've been worked on. They're waiting for a payment. Um, we have catalogs such as motor and all data, where you can pull in labor time for a job and how to do a job. That being said, that might be more something your mechanics do. Labor catalogs are pretty common in the industry, but that'll be able to tell them kind of how to do the repairs. Typically, you'll create a ticket with this create ticket button on the bottom left, and then we can go in, look up a name. I'm assuming, and Catherine can correct me on this, you'll have an active customer database from Fenton.
Yes, I believe
Yeah,
so.
so
No.
yeah, in the case of Fenton, it's just um, changing the credentials. Everything's going to stay the same, so the customer database is going to be there. So if Sally Smith walks in, they should be able to look up Sally Smith because she's already in there. That's correct.
Oh, that's great. Okay.
So how would you like to work questions?
Hmm? Also, you can go in and you'll either have them in the system just by typing in their name or plate or however, and then you can just create the ticket that way. Or typically, you might hit the new customer button, which is this new customer, and that's how you log in active customers. So you can go edit.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd fill in all that information. The more, it's always recommended to get as much information as possible, um, because you'll be, especially with like cell phone numbers, because then you're able to do text marketing, where you can send out like e-blasts to customers on promotions and stuff coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Those are pretty useful, as well as like printing notes and internal notes to make notes on the customers, which are down here. And when you're
Mm-hmm.
done, you just put add vehicle, where you can go back to the vehicle. I'm going to edit one of the existing ones, but let's go to show one of those. And you can decode the plate by Carfax as well as the VIN, or you can select the vehicle manually with this select vehicle option.
Hmm.
You'll always want to make sure this is accurate. These are the services you're tracking. This way you can see when stuff is due on the cars. That's again really good way to market and upsell is you can generate lists based on, hey, who is due for an inspection, send all of them a text or send all of them an email or a postcard, and then that brings in some business there. Might even be advisable when taking over the shop, you could send out a mass text to all of the customers saying like, hey, we're under new ownership, here's a special we're doing for the first week or something, just to kind of gauge that. And again, on the cut vehicles as well, you can have printing notes and internal notes. Maybe here, like a printing note could be the car is needed by 3 p.m. to pick up the kids. Once you do have all that, I'm going to go to the ticket screen, and I hit add ticket, and this is where you'll put in those repairs. So typically, as a service writer, you would go in, take customer instructions, maybe needs oil change, and maybe parking brake not engaging. And you can go in there. If you have a job you don't want, such as we quoted them for an oil change in the past, you can just click that gear and delete it, because I'm going to show you how to make a new one. And you can always use the inspection button, which you'll have a bunch of inspections custom to Autolab there for you. They'll be a little different from this one, but we can just see that, say, brakes and wheel bearings. And you can go here, maybe say everything's good, but maybe we can say the cable is rusted through, and we can say there maybe the pads are low. And either you could check that or the mechanics could check that. Sounds like in your instance it would be the mechanics. And we could say maybe vehicle would not pass inspection. And I can save that. And now when you do print that and hand that to the customer, it's going to have that come out.
Mm.
And that'll kind of look nice to be able to help upsell stuff to customers. And you can always include alongside that like the repair. So I'll go in and I'll do a brake repair. And I can go here, I can go motor, parts and labor, and I can pull it from the labor catalog, or I can manually put in those part numbers and the technicians if you need. But I'll just go in here, catalogs, motor, like I said, or all data, for example. And I'll just type in like brake cable. And I can pull that up, as well as brake pads. And I can save that, and that's just a really quick way to give the customer just, hey, this is how much this job is most likely going to cost.
Mhm.
And I'll go to that ticket, and because I did that after that, it'll print right alongside that brake inspection. And that way the customer will know how much that is.
Yep. And then I'm kind of going to butt in here a little bit. So when it comes to, like in the case of Fenton guys, everything's for your labor unless you change that. Like if you have a staff, add staff or whatnot, you have to put that in there. But labor should all stay the same. As far as parts and everything, those are already automatically synced into the system. And as Jacob mentioned, there's all data, which will automatically pull information that you need for your ticket. So by just knowing that you need specific parts, the system is pretty much, as he's showing you, point and click, as long as you know what the vehicle needs. And you can kind of see at the top, under the tabs there, you see parts, labor, and group. Okay, go ahead, Jacob.
Yep. And you can also, with these, you can always text. Like, do one of you guys have a cell phone number?
Yeah.
What would that be?
Yes, 262-490-1152.
And you can include inspections with quotes, so I can send you like that. And now you'll see in there, it'll say, hey, you failed this inspection, this is how much this job would cost.
Mm.
And that's a really good way to help upsell business and always make sure they know what they're getting and help save money there. Any questions on that?
No.
Okay. And when you any replies will always show up here in the alerts, and you'll also be able to see any outbound or inbound messages here for texts. And those are good for timestamps, especially in Michigan. You need written consent for a quote before you do the work, I believe, and that will count as written consent.
Mm.
Yes, that is correct. So if you, like Jacob just said, if you were to text this estimate to a customer and they hit reply back accepting and approving the repair, you can then start working on that vehicle because you do have that approval to do so, and that's the case in the state of Michigan. You do need approval before doing the work. And doing it through text is super convenient, and it's a very popular way that we get work approved for in the state of Michigan as well. So customers really like that.
So I guess, thank you. My question is, what are some common mistakes you see?
I don't quite know what you mean with common mistakes.
Sorry. What was that?
What do you mean? In regards to texting?
No, in regards to what you've shown us already, like if you pick
Yeah.
the wrong labor or the wrong part or where some
Generally, the
opportunity.
labor, because it's pretty intuitive, people don't really mess up on that step. Usually the only things I see people mess up on is like their labor rate or taking payments and stuff. Because generally mechanics, as most shops are owned by people with experience in that, a lot of the mistakes as far as like selecting labor and knowing what job to do wouldn't really be where a mistake is made. As far
And
as
then,
systematically goes.
and is there a way to pick the wrong part or the wrong price point for the part where you would get it cheaper somewhere else?
I mean, certainly when you're in like the labor catalog, when you're here, like the pads were low and he needs a brake cable. When I search for like brake if I just search brake, I mean, you could click on the wrong part here instead of like a brake pad. You could get like a brake caliper or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that would just be more caution and patience than anything.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm
No,
just
I
No.
understand.
trying to figure out where I might step in the wrong.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay, I'm good. It looks good.
and I mean, it's always going to default here. At least, I'm not sure about AllData's catalog, but Motor will always default to severe. So you'll always get a little bit. You can always do that to get a little bit extra hours. That way, you're always kind of erring on the side of
Mm.
caution and profit.
Right.
So what you're saying is if you check severe by default, it adds
In Motor,
time
yes.
to
So
it
like,
adds time to repair.
correct. Typically, most parts catalogs, I'm not sure about AllData, have 3 labor rates: warranty, how much you'd get charged for like a warranty, like a redo from the OEM manufacturer, how much you charge for standard, which is like the usual going rate, and severe, which is usually the usual going rate with a little bit extra on top. Any,
I don't know. I'm just looking at it.
any questions on that?
Is there more, or is this basically all them just like playing around?
What do you mean, like with the labor rates? You mean?
No, I mean
With the system.
with the
No,
whole
there's
system.
definitely a lot more in the system. This is just me showing you this
Okay.
section. It's pretty important because the labor rates, especially if you don't know how long jobs are going to take, this screen will be your bread and butter for
Yeah.
how you quote out a labor, especially if you don't know like generally how long something's going to cost. But yeah, when you're there, and then when you're done, you go to like if you want to say do that oil change, we can hit that LOF and do 29.95, and you can hit save, and you can have your own labor rate, your own LOF packages set. You're most likely getting the jobs from Fenton already, so she'll have some set. They'll have some set already. But you can have those set to automatically pull up other parts. Like it'll pull up the proper fuel filter, air filter, oil filters. So here we're pulling from like SMP Schultz, but it'll be whatever your default vendor is. And you can see like how much is this fuel filter going to cost, and you can see the different fuel filters you could select, as well as different oil filters, different air filters. You can just pull those in, and you can order those right from the vendor.
Right. Yeah. So in the case like Advance, ordering from like Advance or AutoZone or whatever, you'll have that all here so you can price compare and see what's in stock and can be brought over to the location after you order, because the system will talk directly to those vendors and get the order to them, and they'll bring it to you.
Yeah, and that's just really useful because it'll, like she said, it'll order right from your vendor and have that part ready. But because you're using that vendor catalog, it'll know what part to use. So as long as you know which of these selections to make, like they're slightly cheaper, slightly different, and you can see like the pictures of the parts here, that'll make it a little easier. And if you have that same part in inventory, it'll also offer to use that part from inventory. Any questions on that? That's pretty also important for writing tickets.
Mm-hmm.
No questions for me.
Okay. And when you go here, the program will tell you what oil the manufacturer recommends. So like here it's saying 6.02 quarts of 5W20, and the program has that up here, so you can just see, hey, 5W20. And then it'll say, do you want to round down, do you want to round up, or do you want to charge actual? And we can just charge actual. And the program, because this specific LOF job is set to only include up to 5 quarts, it can be set to be billed additionally past that 5 quarts. So that way it'll save you money there. Any questions on that? Or how much oil, or anything to do with the quick lube?
Could you say that last part again? I'm sorry.
So with Bay-masteR, it'll tell you how much oil to use, and if you want to like round down or round up, and you can set your jobs to only include up to a certain amount. So this job is set to only include up to 5 quarts in the oil change special. So for that additional 1.02 quarts, it'll bill an additional for that, so you don't get ripped off there.
Got it. Thank you.
No problem. One second. And again, you could text that to the customer if you wanted for a quote, but typically for like oil changes you don't. Um, and then after you do that, it's generally good, either while you're doing an oil change or once the mechanic's under the car, to always go through like other inspections. Like you could go through a 33-point inspection and just say, hey, whatever's not good, check off here. Um, and you can just say like, hey, what's anything else look wrong, or just quick notes on that. And that way you can really help upsell jobs. So the key word in like owning a mechanic shop is upselling. So they come in for an oil change, you typically a loss leader, meaning you lose money on it, but you're upselling like headlights, you're upselling wipers, brakes, etc. And you're always making sure you can always push other stuff when someone comes in, even for the loss leading jobs.
Hmm.
Yep, and to that point also, in the case of our marketing model, every service that we do comes with a courtesy 33-point inspection. We use that in our marketing, and we put it on every ad that we have. So this is an important inspection sheet that the techs do they should be doing it every single time, to where, like Jacob said, they bring it to you, say, here is what's not good and needs to be replaced, and then it's your job to take that and present that to the customer and make the upsell. Or save it and create an estimate for them to look at later and say, if you want this done, here's an estimate and what it could cost you, knowing that this could change after such and such days, but this is what needs to be done to the vehicle. So this is an important inspection sheet for sure.
And you can also as you use it, with the help of your mechanics and stuff, you can always come up with new inspections, and they're fully customizable for whatever you want to be on there. So if you see things like up here, a lot of them always have check for like underbody rust, because in New Jersey we really oversalt our roads, and that's a really good way to check and see if we're failing components there due to rust, with how much we just get so much rust. So you'll be able to write whatever you want in there. And you can also take pictures. If you're on like a smartphone or a tablet, you can use that add image button, and you can take a photo with your phone or with your tablet of a failing part and send that to the customer. Like, look, this doesn't look good. Let's change that. A couple of the auto labs like Mount Pleasant, they use that religiously, and that's just a really good way to always make sure you can sell work of, hey, the chassis looks really rusty, it's not worth doing this, or hey, your exhaust looks really rusty, that's why it's making noise. Because the customers aren't always going to look at all the parts, so being able to attach pictures and attach inspections are a good way to get them to see exactly what's going on and make that sale. Any questions on that?
Mm-mm.
And then when you're done, and I'll get rid of that 33 since we didn't check anything there. When you're done, you can just print it out for the customer, and that'll have their total and everything. You can just have that filled out. And you can go and mark it as finished, waiting a payment. They can come back later whenever. You can make a payment. You can either pay in full or pay partially. And you can process that. Give me 1 second. It's just taking a second for that make payment to load. And you can just go in here, either cash, credit, or check, whatever. You can go in here and say, hey, let's do cash, full payment. And now it'll go to paid. And that'll remove from the estimates and the approved and the finished column. And that'll go into the paid column. So when you run end of day, that'll push all of your paid tickets, which will be over here. When you hit that start end of day, that pushes all of your paid tickets into history. And what that does is it'll allow you to get reports based on all of those, as well as keep processes for the day. So like I can go here, I have like the daily labor report, the payment detail. You can do logging reports, so you can track when tickets are like pricing changes, in case you're ever suspicious of anyone. You can track individual groups or promotions, and you have a lot of reports here which these are really good to familiarize yourself with because this is kind of how you track how everything's going in the business and track how much where your cost and profits are going and coming from. But every day when you run out a day, those will print out, whichever ones you have selected here.
On the previous screen, could you help distinguish between finished and paid? Finished is waiting to be paid, is that right?
Well, finished is the job is done, waiting to be paid, and then paid is tickets that have been paid and they're just sitting there, and they're paid, the car's gone. You're waiting for an end of day, and once that end of day runs, they go to history, which would be they look like
And the
this.
distinction between delivered and finished?
Parts are delivered, the work hasn't been done yet.
Okay.
So you have everything you need for a repair, just it's still waiting on the work to be performed. And you can change those ticket tabs as you want to include different statuses or different things. Those are also fully customizable. Any questions on that more?
No, I think so.
Okay. Um, I want to show you surcharges real quick. That's something that's really important, especially for you guys. Um, with surcharges, you could have automatic surcharges, such as like a labor surcharge, a part surcharge, or like an environmental fee. I always recommend at least the environmental fee, because then you can usually get a couple bucks on every repair, which adds up, and that'll cover things like cleaning. That'll cover things like paper towels, disposal of filters, disposal of tires, etc. Those are always just good fees to have. And you can also have discounts that'll be like pre-populated. Like here, you could have like military loyalty, teacher discount, what have you. Any questions on discounts or surcharges?
No.
Okay. And you can keep track of your inventory from the inventory editor on the admin screen. And this is where you would go in and you could put in any of your inventory from the add new inventory button. And I'll go here. And this is where you could put in like the main part number and everything, where you get it from, how many are on hand. The minimum order quantities are important because you can say, hey, we want to order this when it gets to 1, or we don't want to order this if we have more than 5, or we never want to order if it's going to have more than like 10. And you can generate reports based on what parts are owed and what parts need to be delivered. And if you ever need to track a part, you can go to history, and this will have a sales summary, which will be a line graph for how often you sell that part, as well as when you sell it and when you've ordered it, and any cores you have with that. And those are good to keep track of parts to make sure no one's like skimming parts or anything.
What's a core?
So a core is on certain items, like alternators, batteries, and a bunch of other things. There's something called a core charge, and that's kind of like if you buy a jug of water at the store, and like at a wholesale club, they'll charge you extra if you don't return a jug. And when you return that jug, you kind of get like a credit. So it'll be like that. So a battery is like $100, but maybe it's $120 unless you return a battery with it. And that $20 is the core charge that the vendor takes back from that part. Like they give back that credit when they get that part back. You see it a lot with batteries and alternators. And a lot of other parts too, but those are the main ones I'd say. Any more questions on that or inventory? Again, this is somewhere people could lose a lot of money if they potentially don't know much here. And you have here inventory reports again, where you can go in and get reports based on the individual items. So you can get like what parts are in use, and that'll show you what parts are currently on tickets waiting to be used, or what tickets are on hand. You can get inventory reports where you go through and I'd recommend that when you guys take over one of the inventory reports. So this is a parts on hand, parts in use, so what ones are being used. But you might want to go and print out like a physical count sheet and just check off like, okay, we have that, no, we don't have that, that was wrong, or that was stolen, or that was misplaced. And making sure you have whatever standing inventory they wanted to have. So this one usually takes a little bit because it's physically going out on every item I'm supposed to have one at least one of in stock, and that'll give you like a check-off list for what you need. And it's a big report, and it's going to be a couple sheets of paper, several, but it's really really important to do,
Mhm.
especially when taking over a new shop.
Mhm.
Um, Taking a second to load. I'll leave that for now. I'll go to another tab, but I'll come back to that. Um, but also you have here the margins matrix under setup. This is really important because this way it's a sliding scale Do you know what a margin matrix is?
No.
Okay. Um, so a margin is how much you mark up an item, same as a markup. And that'll kind of give you, so like a dollar item can have a higher margin, so you mark that item up by a higher percentage than say $1,000 item. So like if you look here, $1 will be a set. We can have by default a 70% margin. So that would then multiply that, and you'd get a $3.33 tax charge. So that $1 item you can sell at a much higher percentage, which is basically 3.5, as opposed to $1,000 item, which is a much smaller percentage because you can't mark it up at the same percentage. So as you go up, as the price goes up, you're going to want to have the margin go down. That way you can always make sure you're charging like the maximum amount of profit you can have.
Mhm.
Any questions on that? That's really important.
Mhm.
This is generated over time. This is
No, this is the default values. You may have different values when you start at that shop based on what they've noticed in the area, but you
Mhm.
can adjust this at any time, either changing what your breakpoints are or what margin percentage at what cost.
so the system comes with this loaded, and we can make changes.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'd always recommend referring back to this every once in a while. If I always find if customers aren't seeing any kind of notice of something being expensive, you can probably mark it up a little bit. But once they start complaining a lot, mark it down a little bit, so on and so forth. And you can have your vendors either use their margins or your margins. So like each vendor is going to have their own margin they recommend, like the recommended sale price. But you can have the vendors set to use, instead of their sale price, your individual margin based on their cost, which could be higher, could be lower based on how you have it set and what your clientele are okay with.
So not to veer off script, but a question I have is regarding the tax that you charge. Some states charge tax on labor or a different rate on labor than they do on parts. Is that correct?
Yes, but as long as even if the customer comes from out of Michigan, it'll still be billed at your custom tax on Michigan. Like everything you do will be the same tax rate for parts and labor. I think Michigan doesn't have labor, but don't quote me on that. You'd want to ask Grant or Catherine.
Mhm.
Thanks.
No problem. But like, yeah, if someone buys something online, or if someone buys something in your store, it's going to be the same rate. So you don't have to. You'll have one rate, and that'll be set. Other than some customers might be tax exempt, like any nonprofits or religious entities, don't pay tax in Michigan, I believe.
I was asking because the margins therefore could be changed in a state like Michigan where you should
Well, these don't
you,
affect tax.
well, but if you're taxing $100 piece of equipment at 10%, and you're not taxing a $50 repair cost, right? You can play with the price points for each to minimize tax and maximize profit, can't you?
Um, Not really, because this isn't going to. The tax rate would stay consistent regardless of what this is. This is just what the retail price is. So like a $1 item, you're still getting taxed on that 333, and $1,000 and a the tax is going to stay the same rate. Whether you lower the price or raise it, it's always going to have that same rate of tax. This isn't. This is independent from it. This is before tax. This is pre-taxed.
Okay.
Um, but no, then you also have the crystal reports. This has a little bit more information. I don't have this actively on my demo since you need an AutoLab tie-in and it would be an actual shop's database. Um, but when you're at Fenton, if you click that button, it'll show you all their numbers. At this point, I don't have the liberty to pull up any specific AutoLab shops for that. And you can just do like reporting tickets for deleted tickets. I always recommend doing that, especially if you see a lot of cash tickets. Um, I see a lot of shops where people don't have a lot of mechanic experience get ripped off because they don't know what should be charged. So the mechanics will pocket that often. I've seen that a lot. So I'd always recommend kind of going there and checking through that every once in a while. And you can go in here to technicians, and you can put in each technician what their rate is if they get billed for something, and also how much they get paid, like their cost per hour. And you're going to want to make sure you have that filled out at least, because that way you can get proper cost reports and how much jobs are costing. So you can look at like a profit analysis of a ticket. So like this ticket we did before, the paid cash. If you go to profit analysis, it'll tell you how much the cost was, their royalties, which you'll see that for like the AutoLab royalty, as well as like how much the total is, any parts and labor there. Any questions on that? That's also pretty important to keep track of how much like percentage you're making on each ticket. No questions?
So again, sorry to make this mechanic shop 101, but what you're saying is a shop mechanic could do a ticket and it have be $1,000, and then he would change the ticket down to 800, and he would somehow keep the missing 200. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, there's many ways I could see people trying to steal money. Either telling a customer like, "Oh, I'll put your ticket in later," and then they won't put it in, but they'll pocket it. I could see mechanics going in and saying there's a discount, but not giving the customer the discount, like a military discount for 10%, but then they just pocket the 10% at the end. You could see customers say, "Oh, they declined the work after doing it, quote unquote," and then delete the ticket, but they didn't decline the work and they just pocketed it. I mean, any business you're gonna run into people trying to get it over on people. It's almost human nature. It's unfortunate, but just something you have to keep an eye out on. And that's why those reports for deleted tickets and ticket changes are important.
Yep.
That's why the logging reports for tracking of, hey, what tickets were reduced and why are important. That answer your question?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
And that's why the running the end of day and the end of day reports are so important, because like I said, like you can get the daily labor how much you did, but also the service writer how much each people are recommending jobs and doing it. The logging report, which you can see, you can do delete, reduce, status changes, inventory changing. The tax report's important for the IRS and all that, and it's always just really important to look over those books and look over those numbers, especially if you're not really familiar with mechanic shops. And that's just kind of key. And then you have here, we have like the text messaging under marketing. You can generate a list of like everyone who was in for the last year. You can search them, and then you could send out you can send them a text like something like new owners come in for a special on something or some kind of discount, and you could send out like a thousand texts, for example, instantly, and just get people to think about the shop, come in, or you could go into the automatic reminders, and you can go in here for like scheduled appointments, thank you notes, services are due is really important. You can either send that manually at once for everyone who's due for it, or have it come out every month. Same for people with recommendations, people who are inactive, like they were in for a while but not recently. Any questions on that? So that's a really good way to upsell repairs and get business in the shop.
Mm-hmm. I'm good.
But yeah, I mean, those are pretty much how you do a ticket and how you can upsell. I kind of reserved the last like 15 or so minutes, which about now, for kind of Q&A of questions on it specifically, because that's how you make a ticket and how you run reports and how you make sure you run reports, do messaging, and track everything. But I'm sure there's more of that you're questioning on, other than just like texting and stuff.
Kitty, if you don't mind, could you use some of this time to do another ticket example?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay. So say we want to go to create ticket. I'll do that same Drake again. Now say she's already in the system, we don't need to make her a new customer. We'll just hit create ticket. We can go here. We can say any repair for like maybe needs wipers, for example, needs battery.
So the information populated there, right there, vehicle recommendation, is that specific to this customer or?
That's specific to this customer.
Uh,
So that's based
And
on the.
where did that come from?
That's based on
Okay.
either stuff you manually put in, stuff you can quote but haven't done, or what's due in the services.
Okay. So again, the standard answer with any system is garbage in, garbage out. So if the more information you put into the system in a timely manner, the more robust it will be, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's why it's really important to be able to track those. Because you can always keep track of like what you recommend, and that'll come up. And those will print on the invoice with you.
I guess what I would prefer is if we could start with a brand new person,
brand new.
no information, and
Okay.
how we would build it out. Like if I gave you my car information
Sure.
or something.
So I'd go to create ticket. And what's your name?
Brad, B-R-A-D,
What's your last name?
Brokaw, B-R-O-K-A-W.
Like that?
Yep.
So I'd look that up and I see, okay, that's not in the system. So I'd go to new customer. And then once that loads, looks like this is still kind of slowing it down 1 sec.
mm-hmm.
And I'd go and say Brad. I'd say state Michigan. And I'd get your cell phone. What's your cell phone number?
262-490-1005.
I'd go there. I'd fill out your address if you, whatever it was, like 123 Street.
Actually, I see you're in Toms River. I grew up in Rumson.
Nice.
So.
And then put in your like home email, which I'll just put like
brokaw@me.com.
yeah. It's
That's
yeah.
okay. Yeah, this is less. I understand the importance of this, but getting to the vehicle.
I'd add the vehicle. I'd either decode by plate or decode by VIN, which for now.
So if I gave you a plate, could we run that right now?
I can't in my demo run plates. I could run VINs if you have your VIN, but otherwise I can just select vehicle.
Okay, select vehicle.
Okay, so what USA model?
Yes.
Year?
18.
Make?
Chrysler.
Pacifica.
Pacifica.
Submodel?
It's the limited, I think.
The L or
Yeah,
the limited?
I think it's
I
a
don't
limited.
know.
I think it's a limited, whatever.
Limited. Yeah. Okay.
And then I'd save that.
Okay.
And then I'd put in any printing notes if you had any, like cars needed by a certain point or cash only. And you could see
Okay.
here, none of these are filled out because you haven't been in for any of these services, so there's no recommendations.
Okay.
And I'd add a ticket. I'd put in anything you came in for, like what would you come in for example?
Knocking and pinging. And I don't know.
Brake pads
Sure.
are worn.
So I can say brake pads are worn, knocking and pinging.
Maybe the
then-
maybe the starter is
Yeah.
car's not starting
Well,
or
I'll
something.
go with those for now.
Yeah.
So I'd go in.
So, Catherine, are you still on?
No.
You
Yes,
dropped
I am.
Oh, there.
So
Okay.
the car would then be pulled in based on the complaint that I came in and that he's writing down, and then they do that inspection and we kick out other issues, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So I'd go here to inspection. I would do I would start with that brake inspection since the pads are worn. I
Mm-hmm.
would check those out. I'd say everything's good, but maybe the rear and the front pads are low. So I'd say like pads need to be replaced. And you can see the program will actually spell check me there.
Mhm.
I'll do it manually.
That's okay. I got it.
Pads need
Mm-hmm.
to be replaced. And I can say unsafe to drive. Highly recommend. Highly recommend. And I'll save that. And I would go into inspection. You might have an engine-specific inspection. So maybe I'll do a belts and pumps inspection instead of that 33. And I'll say
Timing belt.
everything's good, but I'll have the mechanic check this off with like a tablet or something, and I'll say maybe timing belt looks worn. And I'll say recommend ASAP, could slip and cause damage. Which, like, if a timing belt slips or if a drive belt slips, it can throw off the pistons and destroy the engine. So I'll save that, or I'll take a picture, most likely, especially if the belt's really worn or slipping off, or if there's a lot of play, which would be like how much you can position and move the belt without being engaged. You can see, okay, a pulley's loose or something. That's a really good way to test an engine. Like how much play you have would be if it wiggles one way or the other, or how much you can move it in each direction, and how much give a given belt has. And I can save that.
Sorry about that.
And then I would do those repairs. So say I want to go in and do a brake job. I could just go in here for a brake job. Either pull in through all data or just through my supplier. Like a brake pad. 1 second. So I can go in and see like brake pad.
So right there, what's the difference between those two except the price? How would you know to pick one over the other?
Well, one says front pads and one says rear pads.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
So they're different size. Typically, it's different size pads for the front and back of a vehicle. And there'll be different prices usually. And also, when you go through your vendor, I'll show you it's going to have those different as well. It'll recommend like ceramic or nylon pads. So when I go to suppliers now, for some reason it's not seeing. What was that car? That's 2018 Chrysler Pacifica. So this vendor doesn't actually have pads for that car, but let's see if I can find it manually. Yeah, so you can see here it has like several options for ceramic, severe duty. You'll probably see like the fiber ones, the ceramic. You'll see a lot of different options there, and those are varying quality based on how much that costs.
And do you present multiple options? I'm sorry, again,
Yeah.
Mechanic 101, but how do you determine?
Generally, generally your mechanic would make that call.
Hmm.
You could present the customer with multiple options, but
Yeah.
I always kind of, when I do brake pads, I always go kind of mid-range. But it depends what the customer wants. How much profit you could make you could make more of a profit on some brake pads if you push, maybe able to sell the cheaper ones at a higher markup or something. So you kind of go from there and base it on that.
I see.
And
Okay.
sort of go on, Jacob kind of talked on that, but your mechanics will advise you, for the most part, what they recommend that the vehicle should have. And so that's kind of going to be your guiding point to make that decision. You won't be just putting out good, better, best in front of a customer. Usually we don't see that in a shop. It's usually, this is what we recommend, this is the parts that we know that are good parts, and a mechanic will know what's good and what's not good. So
Mm-hmm.
making that decision will be really easy.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. That kind of is all there. And that's like every part. There's going to be, like, there's the OEM price, there's the aftermarket parts, there's all kinds of stuff. Like, if you look at, like, a spark plug, there's going to be the same thing with, like, iridium, platinum. It's all going to be a little different.
Okay, so then you would finish this and text them. Can you just finish it
Yeah,
up for me?
so say I have these parts, I would go and I'd text you this and be like, let's include the inspection. Or even not, you could just say, hey, this is how much your brake job's going to cost. And you'll get that message. I'm assuming you got that?
Yeah. Okay. I sent accept back.
What'd you say?
I sent accept back on the text. I'm just wondering how that inputs into the system.
Yep, 1 second. So you can see that here, I have an unread text.
Uh,
And now it says I accept. So I can say, hey, I read that. And now when I go here, I'll see in the system, in blue is what I sent, in red is what you have. So I see here, I have accept. That'd be written. That would count as written consent to do that work for the brake job.
and then what?
And then I can go down here to say repair,
Oh, repair. Okay.
and let's check that engine. Where I'd go in here.
So as of now, we are still upselling, right? We haven't pressed repair or anything, correct?
Well, those are still all repairs, but it's still the ticket status estimate. So you're still just building the estimate for your mechanics to either to give the customer to get approval or to give your mechanic to do the work. As far as from your end goes, there's not much difference between what an estimate looks like and what an approved estimate looks like based on just saying it's approved once you build it.
Is there a box how do you paste and cut that text information into notes or something? How does
that
it
texting
move?
is just here in text. That's always logged here.
Okay.
But how do you move through the system to start the repair?
Well, once say they're not doing that engine, but they're just doing the brakes, I would just move the status to like approved.
Oh, there.
And then I would
Okay.
just hand a copy, either tell the mechanic to do this or hand a copy of this ticket to the mechanic, or you have a punch card system, and the mechanic would then see, hey, this is in my system, let me punch time on this and do this job, depending.
Okay.
Does that kind of answer your question on that? Like, it's just the approved, like you could schedule it, approve it, however. You could go here.
I just wasn't seeing
Yeah,
what the drop down was.
Yeah. So you can schedule it, and then that'll go on here, and you can just drag that to wherever you want on the bay, or shift other jobs by putting it in the way.
Oh, I see.
I'm
Yeah.
not gonna move it.
Okay, that's nice. I didn't know that.
Mhm.
So that's just move, paste and move,
Yeah,
or click and move.
just to see your schedule and bill it for custom mirror mechanics. Like if you want to, you could have like instead of Bay 1, 2, 3 here, I could have like Brad, Joe, Timothy, and those could just
Mm-hmm.
they know that's what they're doing that day.
Mm.
I think we're just about out of time. Kitty, do you have
Yeah, you
any
have
more
7 more
No, I'm
questions?
minutes.
Sorry.
You have 7 more minutes with that.
uh,
You went silent again.
I'm trying to think.
no, I'm sort of just processing stuff.
In my previous life, I
Yeah, if you,
kind of was a troubleshooter, so that's why I'm always asking, where can things go wrong and how do you anticipate them? So, um, Catherine, do you have anything you want to add?
at this point, I don't. If you, Jake, if you want to go back and show them based upon, since we've started a ticket from new customer all the way through to this point, if you want to show them when you preview that ticket, all the data that we just entered, how that displays
Sure.
on an actual ticket, that they'll either, they'll one, present to the customer and it's going to be the same thing that gets presented to the tech. So as you see, you came in, you had brake pads are low and ping and banging, but we're only approving to get brakes done today because that's what got approved through text messaging. So you wrote this whole estimate. It's Brad who came in. At the top, you got the customer's information, noting that the fact that they came in saying my brake pads are worn and I'm knocking and pinging. However, the customer knows that they only approved to have their brakes done. So you went and you pulled the parts, you pulled and did the tech did an inspection that gave you the knowledge that you need front pads and rear pads and shoes and rotors and drums, whatever. You went through, selected your parts, and then with that, the labor carried over through, what would you use motor, right,
I
Jacob?
use motor, but you could use whatever.
Motor says it'll take about an hour and a half to do this job at 65 an hour because that's what your labor is at. That will be different with Fenton or when we set up for Milwaukee. Those are all, in the case of Milwaukee, that will be pre-set up before you get started. In the case of Fenton, that's already in there. And then you see below that, you see the fact that we sent you a text messaging saying that you need brakes. That's going to cost you $546.42, or I'm sorry, $628.68. And that you approved this on this day at this time, and we have that recorded. So you gave us consent to do this job.
Does the
On the next
system
page.
have the ability to email these to someone who's at work?
Yes, so you can. I generally find texting a better way to get approval, because and send copies to people because I think the statistics are like 20% of emails get read and like 80% of texts.
Ah,
But
Okay, so you're saying it's a two-step process. You text them, you get the approval, and then you email them the details.
if you
Is
want
that
to
right?
email, I would always just text. Especially
So,
nowadays, people really just don't check emails much. But you can always just hit that
Mm.
email button, and that'll send the copy of the email to that customer.
oh, I see. Okay.
Next to the texting.
Okay.
is the
One
email.
thing too, it's customer preference. So as you're collecting customer data, when you get their name, say we would like have your cell phone or your home phone number, but know that we can text you an estimate. Would you like that to be done? And they'll usually tell you. And also say, can you please give us your email? And a lot of times what stores will do, they'll ask, do you prefer to be emailed your estimate for approval, or would you prefer to be text message? And depending on how their day schedule is, they'll tell you either or. And so you either write it in the note, there is a note section, but you can put customer wants to be emailed, estimate once completed, or customer wants a text message once completed. You can do either or, and it's usually customer preference. I hear service writers tell me that most of their customers like text messaging, but there are some stores that say it depends on the customer because of their schedule.
Okay.
Or their age. Millennials probably like
Yes.
text. Gen Xers, we like emails. So.
Yes, that is true too. And some, like the old-fashioned phone call or whatever. But it is basically customer preference. But the system can do both.
Yes, it can. It's very, very robust.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's really intuitive. Especially if you have help from your mechanics, it'll really help out there.
Okay. I think that's
Yeah.
more than enough.
For now. So, yeah.
We can definitely schedule more of these going forward if you need.
Yeah.
Is there an opportunity for us to get dummy accounts and play in them online, or how does that work?
Yeah, if you call in tomorrow, they should be able to make that. I'll probably not be in the office tomorrow, so I might not have time. But if you call the main support line or ask Joseph, he'll be able to make it.
That would be great.
Yeah, I'll reach out to Joe. I'll reach out to Joe and ask him to put in that request and have that done, and then that way you guys can
Yeah.
get the account to be able to
But AutoLab does have that
Poke
training
around a
account
little
you could
bit.
give them as well.
Yes,
Oh.
Yeah.
that is true too. So I'll follow up with that detail for you guys.
Okay,
Really,
great.
like I said, I just wanted you guys to get eyes on the system. I know it's
Right.
a lot to take in, but this is the starting point, so we can start running eventually.
Yes, absolutely.
And we'll have more sessions, and it'll be more hands-on as we go forward. But like I said, we just wanted to start getting you guys involved with the system because you will be using it. So
Perfect.
Thank you
Jacob,
so
I
much
thank
for
you
your time.
Thank you very much.
Really
Happy to
appreciate
help.
it.
Okay, great.
Catherine, again, thank you.
Yes.
Jacob, again, thank you.
Thank you both.
I'll talk to you guys soon.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye.